Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am back with JC and the one and only Usama Dakdok. And we're talking about the Quran. We're talking about the legends, the myths, the eras, the stories, the fantasies, the tales, the legends that made up the stories that are passed off as Allah's revelation in the Quran. We're focusing largely on the Jewish sources of these legends, but of course, many of these are sourced from Jewish legends, which is, rather strange. But of course, we also have Zoroastrian and other influences. So we're going to look at that. There's a little bit from the Bible, but that's twisted and upside down. And you guys, just to bring you up to speed, Usama and I were just talking before this about the differences between Africans and Americans, Westerners, and there are things that people do want to know when they see people broadcasting. Like, people might be thinking, are they wearing any pants? Because you can only see me up to here. But I assure you, I am. And so is Usama. At least he is now, after his wife spoke to him. With JC, that is anybody's guess. Would you guys like to chime in here?
She forced me to wear my new shoes with socks. I said, honey, when I sit in front of the camera, people do not see anything below my belly button. So why do I need to wear these hard, tight shoes with socks? I mean, can I wear it without socks? She said, no, you must wear the socks and the new shoes. So, oh well, life. What can you do? When you're married to a wife who's 36 years.
Rule number one from Vairi: assume the best intentions and pants. Yes, we have good intentions and pants.
Hey,
so
let's get to a good note here. Let's get to a serious note here. Yesterday, I was one of my great, wonderful brothers who helped me to make up a brand new presentation. By the way, I would love to do it with you about moderate Islam, fact or fiction. There's going to be a good something for the future. We're almost finished with it. Yeah, I know. Anyway, so he told me that he went online and he went to some Muslim site, very big one here in Chicago, and they said that they use the computers, they use the AI to prove that that the Quran, the entire Quran, the whole book was written by one man. And AI are in agreement with this Muslim site and the computer in agreement 100% that the Quran was written with one man. It's like the style of writing. It's like the way he's talking, the way he thinks, the vocabularies and all this stuff. One man.
Sure, the translation is written by one man.
That's not true. The funniest thing is, Lloyd, we did the same question. Use the ChatGPT, okay? He has this on his computer. And ChatGPT said, absolutely not. That book is written by different people, different language, different style, different chapters, small and big, short and tall. I mean, literally, it's just, these people do not know how to lie, Lloyd. I mean, seriously. I mean, anybody have a ChatGPT on his phone? I can do it in a minute. It will not even take a minute. You ask ChatGPT that question. Is the Quran written by one person from the style of writing or vocabularies or whatever? And ChatGPT, absolutely not. It's written by a bunch of different people. So what I'm saying is, Muslim can lie in your faith, and you cannot help but to laugh how stupid these people are. We're no longer walking to school or maybe go to school riding on camels. We actually use bus. We use cars. Life changed, Lloyd. You cannot use yesterday to prove your propaganda today. It does not work that way. I mean, the biggest problem the biggest problem I have was this brand new presentation, moderate Islam, phobia or fiction. It is the huge, large amount of lies Mohammed Zudi Jasser and his team are doing to reform Islam in America. To the point, like when you read his stuff, you just take your glass off and it's like, clap your hand like this. That's in the word of Allah. That's frustration. And you go, I don't know what to do with these stupid people. It's so much, Lord. It's so much. It's beyond my way of, I mean, I don't know what to do. Should I quit? Anyway, go ahead, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, no, unfortunately, that is the way it is. But I think we're making inroads. And JC, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, actually, based on what Usama said, people have said, scholars have been hinted as different authors for the Quran. Even Murad, I think he said that there were at the very least two. Some scholars have hinted that at the very least four. We don't even know how
Yeah.
many, but certainly not one. And when we see all of these different influences, it makes sense that it would not be even one single tradition. Perhaps the story of Ibn Thabit putting together the Quran from all sorts of places had a bit of a memory of a real event where someone actually took stories that were floating around from many different people and perhaps from different regions. Allah knows best.
I mean,
He
think,
does.
yeah, think about it. All the different languages. I mean, how many languages are there? There's no way
Over
that,
50 identified.
yeah,
Yeah,
no
that's
way
just
one
how that
guy
is.
spoke all these languages. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the audience, welcome. And just so by the way, guys, also I should let you know, I have to travel next week. So I am leaving the country on the morning of the 6th. That's Wednesday. And I'm only coming back the next Wednesday night. I am not going to be available. And so I come back very late Wednesday night, sort of possibly after midnight on Thursday morning. So yeah, I won't be available until at least Thursday, depending on how things are. So for a week, and yeah, also this weekend could be a little tough. But anyway, so definitely from the 6th to the 13th, I am not going to be in country. I'm not going to be available. I'll be traveling on business.
Yeah.
So I'll be away.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Brother Lloyd. I'm actually heading to Phoenix tomorrow. I'm gonna be busy for the next 12 days, but I will do my best to join you guys. It's gonna be another 2 hour difference between you and I, but hopefully, briefly, we can do it because in 9 o'clock there, I think it will fit good. I think we'll see what the Lord's gonna do.
Okay, we shall see what happens. So yeah, where were we? Let me bring up the screen, get into things. Yeah, I was wondering if there was anything that I wanted to share, but I can't think of anything right now. Yeah, so guys, we ended up with the stories of Harut and Marut. Turns out that the names Harut and Marut are taken from Armenian mythology, from Armenian pagan religion. It refers to the angels that they call Horot and Morot, which are taken from another source where they're called Harvatat and Ameratat, which itself stems from Persian, where the names are Khurdad and Murdad, which itself also is found in other legends. In Sanskrit, you have Sarvata and Amrita, right? So yeah, that's in the Rig Veda. So these are actually Zoroastrian myths about angels. And of course, Muhammad then took these stories, or whomever took these stories, modified them, and there you go.
I mean,
So-
could you think, Brother Lloyd, could you think maybe Jibril mistakenly listened to these stories instead of Allah and give it to Muhammad by mistake?
Allah works in mysterious ways. You know, that's all I can say.
I learned that from you. Yeah, mashallah.
Yeah,
I mean,
Allah
seriously, I mean, when you talk about the satanic verses, they were given from the devil. Even though Muhammad thought he got them from Jibril. Maybe these stories were taken from the devil or third source, and Muhammad did not know. I mean, he's just a human. He said he's immoral. He's not like God or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, who knows what's going on with all of this. Right, so let's continue. So let's go to the next portion of this. Right, the author goes on in our book. So hold on, let me show you the name of the book, just so that everyone who has not seen this before, The Original Sources of the Quran by W. St. Clair Tisdall, right? That is the source that we're working with. And this is really, really fascinating. So well over a century ago, various European scholars were aware that the Quranic stories were clearly just copies, borrowings, modifications of existing myths and legends, children's fairy tales and such from other cultures, that all of which were present and around surrounding the Arabians. So this goes on to say, independent myths that to lead him to consider them one and the same. So these stories, actually, let me just finish the sentence. As we shall see in due time, he derived not a little bit of information from the Persian as well as Jewish sources, and there was enough resemblance between the two originally independent myths to lead him to consider them one and the same. Hence, the strange phenomenon of the two Aryan genii as the chief actors in a scene borrowed from the Talmud in its main features. So, unfortunately, here we would also have to conclude that various Jews, these Talmudic Jews, or at least, shall we say, those who were leaning more towards the what would you call the Kabbalistic, were those with the more Kabbalistic bent, were also borrowing ideas from the Zoroastrians and other cultures and putting those stories, modifying those stories, and putting them into their own writings, which is something probably that we should also critique. Because if those are known stories that are not, shall we say, supported by biblical narrative, and these are pagan ideas, then also these Jews who went off and wrote all of these things, they are also at fault, I would think. I think that's a fair criticism to make here.
Yeah.
But from there, they made their way into the Quran. And then they became the word of God. At least these Jews did not claim they were the word of God.
Yeah. No. I don't believe the Jewish people said any of the writing of the Talmud and the Mishnah is inspired. As a matter of fact, we have this famous statement. I can't remember the guy who made it up. He said, there is no Jew who does not believe in the Talmud and the Mishnah. But he also said, if you believe in everything written in it, you will be mentally ill, like crazy. So, yeah, you accept it as teaching and debates between the rabbis and interpretation, but don't you dare believe everything in it, because then you'll be mentally ill.
Yeah, no, agree. Yeah.
And the Jewish people will not say that about the Torah or any of the books of the Old Testament. They will tell you it is the inspired word of God to Moses, to Joshua, to David, and so on, with whatever names of books they have in their 39 books.
Right. Yeah, I've also prepped about just over 20 pages today to go through different legends in the Quran, and we're going to trace their roots to various sources. A couple of them are they're all quite ridiculous. So, now the girl called in the Jewish story Esther is the goddess Ishtar of ancient Babylonia, and she's worshipped in Palestine and Syria under the name Ashtoreth. She was the goddess of love and of sinful passion, and was identified by the Greeks and Romans with Aphrodite and Venus. Right? She's also identified with the planet Venus, called Zuhra by the Arabs. Right? And he does mention there are similarities and there are differences between the Jewish and the Arab versions. But it is the same character that they're referring to. And it says in the Babylonian myth, so we are told that Ishtar fell in love with a hero called Gilgamesh. Now, we have, in the case of the Muslim story, you have two characters who dispute over a woman, whereas in this case, who are attracted to a woman whereas in the original Babylonian myth, there's only one. It's Gilgamesh. And he rejected her advances. So the story goes, Gilgamesh put on his crown, and for the purposes of attracting the favor of Gilgamesh to herself, the majesty of the goddess Ishtar said to him, "Kiss me, Gilgamesh, and would that you were my bridegroom. Give me thy fruit as a gift, and would that thou were my husband, and I would be thy wife," etc. Right? So there's a whole story there. Then you would drive forth in a chariot of gold, the wheels of which are gold, and its shafts are diamond, and you would yoke the great mules and enter into a house with perfume of cedar wood. And Gilgamesh refused to receive her as his wife, and he taunted her by mentioning some of the many husbands she had who had come to a bad end. And the goddess Ishtar was angry and went up to the heavens, and the goddess Ishtar came before the face of the god Anu. Anu was the heaven, and god of heaven was Anu was the heaven, and the god of heaven of the oldest Babylonian mythology, and Ishtar was his daughter. Now, Esther was taken up into heaven in the other story, but here we see her ascent to heaven mentioned just as in the Mohammedan legend. In the latter, she tempts the angels to sin, just as in the Babylonian tale, she tempted Gilgamesh. In Sanskrit literature, we find a very remarkable parallel to the story that is related in the Quran and the Hadiths. This is the episode of Sunda and Upasunda in the Mahabharata. So, gee whiz, now we're getting stuff from India. We are told there are two brothers, Sunda and Upasunda. They practiced austerities and they required much merit for themselves. And they ultimately obtained sovereignty over both earth and heaven. The god Brahma began to fear unless he should lose his way lose all his dominions. And he decided to destroy the two rivals. And the method he used was to tempt them by sending them the maidens of paradise. Now, remember we spoke about the angels Harut and Marut were fighting over a woman?
Uh-huh.
Well, so this story has some of that element. So what happens is the method which he adopted was to tempt them by sending him one of the maidens of paradise, called Huris by the Mohammedans, and Aparasas by the ancient Apsarasas, by the ancient Hindus. So he therefore created a most lovely Apsaras named Tilotama, and he sent her as a gift to the brothers. And Sunda seized the right hand and Upasunda the left, and each wanted her as his wife, and jealousy caused hatred and enmity, and as a result, they killed each other. And then she returned to Brahma, who delighted at her having gotten rid of both of his rivals. So in this fable, we find mention of the nymph's return, ascent to the sky, although the Hindu story agrees with the Babylonian and differs from the Muslim one in representing as having from first had some connection with the upper regions. So yeah, so again, there's these multiple parallels where they're taking from stories. Any thoughts before I go further?
I noticed that when you're reading these myths and the writing, it have actually beautiful poetry. It have good writing. It's not just blah, 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 blah. And amazingly, this was written hundreds of years before Muhammad, and it have much. It have a story with. They know it's a myth. They know it's a made up, but nobody ever read this. Said, look at the language. Look how beautiful it is. Look how poetry is written in. It must be from God. It must be a revelation. Have you ever heard anybody make that claim? Since it's beautiful writing, it must be a revelation from God.
No.
I mean, this is my point with Muslim. When I talk to Arab Muslims, I don't know how many of them you guys talk to, they always brag about the poetry of the Quran. And I said, for heaven's sake, Shakespeare wrote beautiful poetry. Voltaire, the French, also wrote some beautiful poetry. And actually, not any British, not any British or French say, hey, they must be prophets. Look at the beautiful writings.
Yeah, I've read some of the Upanishads and various other, these epic poems, and some of them are pretty cool reading. I mean, there's some pretty cool stuff there. But what's interesting is that some of these poems, like the Rig Vedas, I've read quite a bit of that in the past, and many people have taken these stories as literal descriptions of spaceships and large old kingdoms with flying ships and laser beams and bombs, and they've made stories out of them, trying to turn them into science, right? Trying to turn them into historical truth, and speculated on that. And I mean, this is basically just a further extension of the idea of taking fiction and trying to make it into fact. And this is what Muhammad did, took older fiction and tried to turn that. And then, of course, they borrow ideas and look for things. I mean, they say here that we can hardly suppose that the different forms of the story among all the different nations were all derived from one and the same origin. I mean, he just showed us there are multiple versions of the same story from different cultures, which means that everyone changed the story in their own way, or they heard it differently, or told it differently. But it's the same story at root. It's just that it's one or it's two people, or they were on earth or in heaven first, or she was on earth or in heaven, whatever the case might be. Details change, but the story is effectively the same. And he says the Jews doubtless borrowed the tale, at least, in part at least, the name of Ishtar or Esther and certain other details from the Babylonians, who had learned it from the still more ancient Akkadians. So the story goes way back. And the Jews were, of course, in that part of the world. And they borrowed the story and they modified it to suit their culture, perhaps. Right? Forgetting its heathen source, the Talmud admitted the tale. And on the authority of the Jews, it was received into the Quran and the traditions of the Muslims.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, does that make sense to you guys? As an author, JC, what do you think?
That creating stories like this is incredibly common, of course, and people will copy a story that is popular in another region, and then they will put their own characters. It's basically like Hollywood nowadays, copy paste. Stories are interesting. The problem is, how do you go from having these stories that people would be familiar with, and they know they're just, stories, into believing that they were divine revelation? There is that big gap, because people would have known that all of these things were not revelation. Even about the verses that talk about Jesus, and the Quran quotes the Gnostic Gospels, people would have known what the actual Bible was, what Christianity was, and that these stories were Gnostics. So how do you go from book that everyone would know to be false to everybody worshipping it? It's weird.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is. That is a very good question. One has to ask.
Yeah, and also I believe because most likely these stories travel from one culture to another, from one land to another orally. That may be where you see they're missing information or adding information. I don't believe they on purpose change it, but who knows? Maybe they just change it a little bit to make it fit their culture setting or whatever they want to do with it.
Yeah. So now here's something interesting. I thought this will be an interesting. I've got a synopsis that I wrote at the end. I'm going to read this and then provide a synopsis. But this is really interesting. I did not come across this before when I'd read the book, but this was very interesting because I've always wondered about how people interpret this particular story around the Nephilim, and he offers a different hypothesis here. If we further inquire how it was that the Jews accepted the legend, the answer is that they did so through mistaking the meaning of one Hebrew word in the book of Genesis, the word Nephilim, which occurs in the passage Genesis 1 to 4, and is supposed to be derived from the verb nafal, to fall, the fallen. Hence, Jonathan ben Uziel in his Targum took it to mean fallen angels. And doubtless in doing so, he was adopting the then current etymology of the word. In order to account for the etymology, the story was in part invented and borrowed from Babylonian mythology by the ignorant Jews. So he's referencing here, if you're going through, even within the biblical context, there are many times the Jews or groups of Jews have been led astray, have gone astray. They've done things that they should not have done. So he's referring to various people that have clearly made mistakes or gone astray here. Much in the same way that, as we have previously pointed out, a false etymology of gave rise to the story of Abraham's deliverance from the furnace of fire of the Chaldees.
I remember that.
Of the Chaldees. Yeah, we've spoken about that several times on the channel. Yeah, hence Jonathan in his comment on Genesis 6 verse 4 explains Nephilim by saying, Shem, Hazai, and Uziel, they fell from heaven and were on the earth in those days. The myth in the Midrash Yalkut already quoted arose from this blunder. Yet even accepting the supposed derivation of Nephilim from the verb meaning to fall, it was not necessary to explain the origin of the name in such a way. Again, I'll explain this at the end. I've got a summary I'll read. The Targum of Onkelos acts much more wisely by understanding the Nephilim to have been so called because they were men who used to fall violently on the helpless and oppress them. Hence, this Targum translates this word by one which means violent men or oppressors, not the, shall we say, the occultic meaning that lots of people prefer. I'm just going to grab this. I want to explain what was said here to everyone. Let me just do this. So the whole fallen angel myth, this is from the author. I'm just explaining this to simplify it. The whole fallen angel myth stems from a linguistic misunderstanding of the word Nephilim. One translator, Jonathan ben Uziel, assumed the word came from the Hebrew root nafal, which means to fall. Because he took that literally, he assumed it meant beings who fell from the sky. So he pulled in old Babylonian myths to flesh out a backstory about angels being cast down to earth. However, other scholars point out that falling in this context didn't mean falling from the clouds. It meant falling upon people, as in attacking them or oppressing them. In that light, the Nephilim were not supernatural beings. They were violent, powerful men who bullied everyone around them. And the error was taking a word that described a person's behavior, being a predator, and mistaking it for a description of their origin, being an angel.
Can you open us Genesis 6, 1 to 4 to read the passage? I have a quick thought to share with our audience, if you don't mind, Brother Lloyd. Genesis 6, 1 to 4.
Okay, here we are from the King James Version, the one that St. Paul had with him. Oh, shush, man. What am I doing? I wanted to close this content. I think there you go. So Genesis 6, King James Version, 1-4. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men. Now, also, there's a story around this new interpretation. We'll get to that as well. He speaks of that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they choose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. He's going to give us another view on that as well in a minute, yeah?
Sure. I'll give you my simple interpretation from my study of this passage years ago. Yeah, I don't know, more than 20 years ago, when I was in seminary, actually. And before that, we in the Bible, we know that when we say the Son of God, immediately in our mind, we think of angels, or we think of Jesus Christ. He's the Son of God. And when we say the Son of Man, we're talking about human. Therefore, when Jesus says, and you will see the Son of Man come in the cloud, scholars of Islam like Ahmadiyyat and others say, look, Jesus, he himself acknowledged that he is the Son of Man. He is not the Son of God. Wrong. Why? Because in many locations of the Bible, when we talk about the Son of God, we're talking about human. Like Adam was the son of God. Look at the genealogy. You go to the genealogy, son of Adam, son of God, because he was made by God. He is his son. And if we go to in the book of Hebrews, book of Daniel, chapter 7 and verse 14, that is a prophecy which Jesus was quoting in his judgment before the high priest Caiaphas, before, as he was exempt before the crucifixion, and the high priest tore his clothes. He said he blasphemed. What does he blaspheme? He just said he's a son of man. No, that son of man who will come in the cloud is God Almighty, as you go to Daniel 7 verse 14. So son of God does not mean that angels. No, that's not. In that passage, we know that Cain already killed his brother Abel, and Cain was living separate from the rest of the genealogy of the children of Adam. So now the children of Adam continued in the Bible to be sons of God. But when you go to that passage and you read about the sons of men, the sons of God are the descendant of Cain? No, the descendant of Adam, the continuation of the sons of God. And what is the daughter of man? These are the daughters of Cain, who is supposed to live separate from the children of Adam, from the rest of the family. He said, I will be run away from my life. You can go to Genesis 3 and read it. I mean, just read this, Genesis 4, after the fall, after the killing of his brother. It's all there. So, in these days, they were giant. Oh, because people were giant, because they're the descendant of the angels and the human. No. People were living 1,000 years, 800-900 years, and make you big, and make you huge, and make you strong, and make you giant. As a matter of fact, all the people were giant. All the people were giant. So, when we talk about the sons of God, we're not talking about angels. We're talking about human, the descendant of Adam. Sons of men or the daughter of men, these are the daughters of Cain. They were supposed to be living separate. God gave him a mark to live, and nobody will kill him. And if somebody kill him, he will be killed 7 times more, whatever the scripture teach about that. And a great evidence that when they were mocking Jesus, I mean, we have solid evidence. And resurrection. Who is this? These are the Sadducees. Sadducees do not believe in the resurrection. So Jesus ended that, because he came to him with this test, or that stories he made up. A man was married to a woman, he died without having any children. Her brother married her to raise his brother's children. He died without children, and so the third and the fourth, 7 brothers. In the day of judgment, which one of the 7 men will be her husband? And Jesus answered, clear answer, in the day of judgment, they will be like angels. What do you mean like angels, Lord? They don't marry and remarry. There is no sexual relationship in heaven. Angels do not have sex. Angels are spirits, and they can appear like a human, but they don't have sex. They are holy angels. And this propaganda of the mystery of misunderstanding the word and the legend of the Jews, and go to the Bible. And now we have some Christian even teach the same thing. Nope. And by the way, he said to them, don't you know that the Bible said he is God, the Son, the Father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? He's not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. There is resurrection, and there is eternal life, and there is eternal hell. And Jesus talked about hell more than talk about heaven. But the sons of men, these are the children of Adam and Eve, the continuing of these 900 years having babies, and the daughter of men, these are the descendant of Cain, not angels and human.
Now he provides some interesting, he says here, it is interesting to note that the Samaritan Targum to the Pentateuch, published by Dr. Adolf Brühl in Frankfurt in 1875, gives the same explanation. It paraphrases sons of God, but it doesn't say angels, it says sons of the governors. These are the nobles. These are the men of political authority. So he says the original runs thus. That's the text there. So he says, others have in more recent times denied the derivation of the word from nafal to fall, preferring to connect it with the Arabic word nabil, which means noble, and also skilled in archery. After all, like many proper names in the early chapters of Genesis, the word may prove to be of Sumerian origin, unconnected with any root in the Semitic languages. As the more ignorant of the Jews were lovers of the marvelous. On this point, I was doing a lot of research into Christianity in Arabia, and I came across a passage as well where the scholars were saying that it was the practice even of the Christians in that time, like the 3rd, 4th, 5th century. They weren't necessarily knowledgeable of the Bible, but they loved these apocryphal stories. And these apocryphal stories were things, these legends were things that they held to. So this practice was not uncommon in that era. I mean, there's precedent for that. And they loved the stories of the marvelous. The stories of the sin of the fallen angels grew ever more and more strange and wonderful. So at first, only 2 angels are spoken of as having fallen, and this was an exaggeration of the Babylonian tale of Ishtar's tempting Gilgamesh alone. But in later times, their number in the tales current among the Jews grew greater, until at last in the apocryphal book of Enoch, it is said that the angels who fell from heaven amounted to 200, and they all descended in order to sin with women. So the following extract from that book is important as narrating the legend in a fuller form than those which we have previously quoted. It also gives a statement which agrees with the one made at the conclusion of the Jewish legend in the Midrash and also in the Quran. And it came to pass, let me just scroll down here. This will be explained a little further down here. And it came to pass, wherever the children of men were multiplied, in those days daughters fair and beautiful were born. And the angels, sons of heaven, beheld them and longed for them, and said to one another, come, let us choose out for ourselves wives from men, and we shall beget children for ourselves. And Semyazus, who was their chief, said, I fear you will refuse to do this deed, and I alone shall be guilty of a great sin. Therefore they all answered him, let us all swear an oath, and let us all bind one another under a curse, not to give up this intention until we accomplish it and do this deed. They swore together and were bound under a curse. After giving the names of the chiefs of the rebel angels, the story proceeds, and they took to themselves wives. They chose out wives, and they taught them poisons and incantations and root gathering, and showed unto them herbs. Azael taught men to make swords and weapons and shields and breastplates, the teachings of angels, and he showed them metals and the method of working them, and bracelets and ornaments and paints and collyrium and all sorts of precious stones and dye. He mentions here Greek fragments of the book of Enoch, edited by Dr. Sweet, who also gives the same passages from Syncelus. In the Persian Yanabiul Islam, I quoted and translated the Ethiopic text. So I guess that got around. Now he goes on to say that this account of the origin of feminine ornaments is the same that we have in the Midrash. It enables us to understand the meaning and to recognize the source of the passage from the Quran, in which, speaking of Harut and Marut, Muhammad says that men learn from them that by which they separate a man from his wife. So he adds, and they use not to injure anyone except by God's permission, and they teach what injureth them and doth not profiteth them. And he says, finally, I'll pause here for a moment then. It is hardly necessary to produce any further proof that the story of Harut and Marut is borrowed from a Jewish source, at least in all essential particulars, though in the names of these angels we have traces of Armenian and Persian influence. We've also seen that the Jews derived their form of the legend from Babylonia, and the Jews were in Babylon for some time. right? And the acceptance was in large measure due to a misunderstanding of the meaning of a word in Genesis. So it may be urged that some Christians understand Genesis 6:1-4 in much the same sense as the Jews did, or still do, and that possibly this view is correct. But even granting all this, it is evident from what a corrupt source Muhammad borrowed the narrative, which in the form in which in the Quran and the traditions related, it cannot possibly be correct. Over to you guys.
Yeah, you talk to Muslims in planet Earth, those who can read the Arabic Quran or read it in other languages, they have no idea what is Harut and what Marut and what is the story behind that verse on Solomon. It makes no sense whatsoever. I've not even seen some Muslim imams in the world who knows what Allah is talking about.
Yeah. All right, Butler, thank you very much for the donation. Really, really appreciate it. He says your channel always goes deeper. Well, thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not always sure what to make of all this, but this is very interesting. What he presents here is definitely food for thought. And there seems to be a lot of truth here. And also, remember, we're opening a new avenue for investigation. We're looking at this information in a different way, which I think with the advent of the internet and with archives going online, we can start to really discover the answers that we couldn't do 200 years ago, 300 years ago. And now we can. And people have already given us a foundation to stand on, to finally dissect Islam and discover what really made it up. And it looks like, just from this selection we've done so far, it is all based on pagan legends, Jewish myths, etc. Usama, nodding your head there?
It's just, I wonder, I love it how Muslims like to show me one verse, show me one thing, when the entire book of the Quran is made out of these materials.
Yep.
I mean, how many shows a Muslim, an intelligent Muslim, not intelligent, a Muslim with common sense, how many shows does he need to watch of our ministry here to figure out there's something wrong with my religion, something wrong with my prophet, something wrong in his miracle, the Quran?
Yeah, I mean, how did these stories become the sacred word of Allah? We're going to look at, by the way, those tablets. I hope we will end off with that today. We're going to have a look at where did those tablets in paradise where the Quran was first written, where did that come from? Where do we source that? Yeah. Any thoughts, JC? Yeah.
Yes. Let's see if we can make matters just a little bit worse. So we have all of these stories. Great. So imagine that there is a guy just telling them, but the information is not in the Quran. So just imagine for 1 second that the story of Muhammad is quite real to a degree. He's walking around and he's telling these stories. But I think Usama can vouch for this. It is later that you will have the likes of Ibn Kathir, who will have to go to original sources, that will have to go to the Bible, to the Talmud, to all sources, and trying to figure out what a particular verse was talking about, which means there is a huge disconnect. If it was a guy that had read the Book of Enoch and then he goes there and tells people the story, that is the story that would be carried down. But it looks like by the time that we get to the great scholars of Islam, they have the book, they are trying to figure out what the stories there were talking about, and then they go out there and dig and they try to figure it out. Right? Would you agree with that, Usama?
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. And the funny thing is, when the most repeated statement of Ibn Kathir, when he found something in the legends which fit the Quran, it does not fit the Bible, he always mocked the Bible. And that was wrong in the Bible, and that was wrong in their translation, and that was wrong in their interpretation. It's just repeated, ridiculous statement by Ibn Kathir for no reason, except he's just ignorant.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, this whole story with the Nephilim, it's never sat well with me, because you see the most incredibly, shall we say, science fiction conspiratorial explanations for it. I mean, it goes into all sorts of, and I'm like, does it say that? Does that say that? Wow, thank you, Harbinger. Wow, the Marut link to Quran is amazing. Yeah, well, hey, dude, you know what? I sent you a message on Teams. Look who is in the chat. We have Steve here, Usama.
My
Steve,
hero, my brother, whom I love. My same Same father,
Steve,
different
I
mother.
sent you a message on Teams. I don't know if you're still on Teams. I sent you a message. We need to get you back on. We need to hook up. If you'd like to join us, let me know. I will send you the link. You're welcome to join us right now. You know what? I'm going to drop the link into the chat for you. Please feel free to join us anytime.
يلا حبيبي خش معانا يا بابا خش معانا لو سمحت يلا يا بابا.
Yeah, Steve, you're welcome anytime. Like, please jump in. It will be great to have you if you can. You know, I have dropped it. It's just above your message there. So just check. So, yeah, he goes on, we cannot mention with the same fullness of detail all the other points which the Quran has borrowed from Jewish legends. I mean, we're just on the Jewish legends. We haven't even done all the other, besides the one Zoroastrian legend, but I mean, there's so much more to go through. So an examination of what is related in the Quran in reference to Joseph, David, and Saul, Talut, for example, will show how far these accounts differ from what the Bible tells us. In most, if not every instance, the reason for the divergence from the Bible account is found in the fact that Muhammad followed the Jewish legends instead of the true history as given in the Bible. So they clearly didn't have a Bible, or whoever was telling him the stories didn't know the Bible, but he picked the legends, just like you said with Ibn Kathir, every time. And he says occasionally he misunderstood the legends, or he amplified them, exaggerated them from imagination or from other sources. I agree.
Every time Ibn Kathir reference the story in the Bible, the real account, he always marks the Bible. Every time.
Yeah. Andrew says, I think the Jews were creatively mistranslating for Muhammad to test him. That may be, but if that is what happened, then unfortunately they created a monster.
That's why, by the way, let me prove this brother is right. That's why, by the way, in the Quran, Allah is telling Muhammad, don't listen to them. Don't ask him. Just wait until Jibreel comes. I mean, it's like Muhammad is making boo-boos and he's correcting his boo-boos by his own hand. Is their own in the Quran. It's as if Allah knows what Muhammad's going through. When in reality, he was just I believe that's one of the reasons why Muhammad hates the Jews. He praised them, he made them the best of the world, he made them the ancestors of the prophets and the books and the wisdom, and they tricked him so many times. And by the way, that's their nature. They did the same thing with Jesus. When they were asking Jesus questions, it's not because they want to learn from him, it's they want to trick him, they want to, make him make a mistake, but he did not. Not like Muhammad, who just fallen into their traps.
Yeah, no, agrees. So, and then he goes on here. Art Butler, thank you very much. Thank you, really, really appreciate it. Thank you, very grateful. Really, I'm very, very grateful when I get these donations. It really, really does help. So, so what do we have? So we now proceed to deal with other instances in which the Quran's indebtedness to Jewish legends is obvious. In Surah 7, Al-Araf 170, we read, and when we raised up the mountain above them as if it were a covering, an umbrella, right? And they fancied that it was falling upon them, we said, take ye with fortitude what we have brought you, and remember what is in it. Perchance you may be pious. In Tafsir al-Jalalain and other Muhammadan commentators, they explain this verse by informing us that Allah raised up the mountain Sinai from its foundation, and he held it over the heads of the children of Israel in the wilderness, and he threatened to let it fall on them and crush them if they did not accept the commandments in the laws of Moses. This they had previously refused to obey because of their severity, but on hearing this threat, the Israelites received the law. And Hussein is in the house.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Hello, can you hear us, Steve? I think he may be having some difficulty. We'll leave him there. Let's hope he can figure that out. He can sort that out.
Yeah. If you, while we're waiting on Brother Steve, can you look at Quran 22, verse 65?
You're so lucky. I know a Quran written by a dude.
Oh, yeah.
Some Dakdok.
I got two verses to read quickly. 22, 65 and 35, 41. It's amazing. So it is not like we misunderstood that verse you're reading. That is exactly what Allah said.
Okay, he's back again. Let me just 2265. There we are. Give me 1 second. Let's get. And hello and welcome. I'm just going to kick the other. Hello. Oh my God. Oh, I'm so sorry, Steve. I think that was me that kicked you.
Are you serious? You kicked my buddy out. I'm leaving right now. Listen.
No, because he came in twice.
Bring him back, or I'm quitting.
No, he came in twice. I kicked the other connection, and the other one disappeared. So it might be my fault, Steve. I might have been me. I am so sorry. I am so sorry about that.
I cannot forgive you.
Please come back. Please come back. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I mean, that black screen I kicked because I thought, okay, that's a different connection, but yeah. I'm so sorry, Steve. It's my fault. I hope that you can come back. Okay, so you were saying here?
2265.
Do you not see that Allah has made subservient to you what is on the earth, and the ships run in the sea with his command, and he holds the heaven, so it will not fall on the earth except with his permission.
He hold it. Now, go to 3541.
3541. Let me find that. Let's hope Steve can join us again. I won't kick any connections. We have 41. Surely Allah holds the heavens and earth so that they will not vanish, and if they vanish, no one can hold them after him. Surely he was forbearing.
It's true. Allah holds the heavens by his hand, man.
He holds the whole world in his hand. He holds the whole wide world
in his hand.
Welcome, Steve. I'm not going to kick the others.
Steve is back.
Welcome. Great to see you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I think that blank screen is me too. I'm not sure what I did, man.
So we have you twice. Praise God.
Yeah.
Man. Double portion.
So
Yes.
somehow the one is talking and the one is video. I don't know, because the blank screen is your audio.
Leave them alone. Don't touch them. Leave them alone.
Leave it alone.
Yeah. You know what? I'm doing a Bible study tonight. I'm doing a Bible study tonight with first of all, with Armenians, because my wife is Armenian, and so I recognize the name Harut, because that's a common Armenian name, and I'm doing the Bible study, because I speak in English and my wife translates into Armenian, and I was thinking of doing it about Noah's Ark, and to talk about the when the sons of God saw the daughters of men. And so when you guys started talking about Harut and Marut, I just came in instantly. As soon as I came in, you guys started talking about that. And I'm thinking, and you brought in an Armenian angle because the name Harut is Armenian name. And I thought, oh, wow. I got to at least say that there seems like some kind of divine...
So it's not coincidence. God is in the middle here.
So, but man... You know what? That really makes sense because the Harut and Marut in Islam, the magic they do is to cause contention between husbands and wives, and if there's that connection to the Genesis story where the angels came down to procreate with women, that they would want to make that contention between men and their wives so they could have their daughter, their wives and stuff. So it just kind of an interesting connection there. So yeah, I really appreciated what you guys said about that. That's a really very enlightening.
I just did a very quick summary because we did it at greater length previously. But yeah, the names Harut and Marut are the story. It's an apocryphal or pagan Armenian legend, which is ultimately derived from a Babylonian legend, which is ultimately derived from an Akkadian legend. And somehow it ends up in the Quran as the word of Allah.
Yeah. And yes, Brother Steve, the legend did not cause division between the husband and the wife, but Muhammad and his Quran causes a division because It was in the biblical teaching. If Muhammad is from Allah, God, and he followed the same laws of Moses, it's not for a man to leave his wife, but to be united with his wife, and they become one flesh. Jesus taught us that in Matthew 19 about that which is written in Genesis. He said, "Don't you know from the beginning?" Now, when you go to the teaching of Allah, Satan in the Quran, now he got the man to have multiple wives, and he gives the divorce, the power in the hand of man to divorce their wife. We don't have that in the biblical teaching. So what caused division between a husband and wife is not Harut and Marut, the legend, but Muhammad and the word of Allah, the Quran.
Yes, of course, you know, and you know what, you guys, you know, I just wanted to say, because sorry, I don't mean to distract from what you're talking about, but just in America right now, because the turmoil in America right now is it's unbelievable, man. What's happening in America right now?
Anyone try to kill President Trump today?
Yeah,
Anyone on the left? Sorry, let's be precise. Has any Democrat try to unalive him today?
Well, no, but they are making jokes about it, and you know, and they are disappointed. One teacher, you know, put a post saying, you know, look at all the assassins in America's history. They'd be so disappointed in all these guys who failed to kill Donald Trump. You know, I mean, that's how coarse things are.
That's evil.
But there was a video yesterday that I saw that I just wanted to say just real quickly. It's a Muslim girl living in Canada, enjoying the freedoms of the West, and she's married, and her husband has other wives. And she's just saying how wonderful it is because, you know, she gets to send him away to one of his other wives when she wants to be alone, enjoy her me time, go do her facial, go do her, you know, Botox and her nails and her hair. And so she's just encouraging, saying it's wonderful that your husband have all these other wives, because you just get rid of them. You only need them to, you know, you only need them like a few days a month, you know, and send them to their other wives. And this is entering the mainstream of the West right now.
This is Sharia, and it's probably illegal under Canadian law.
Yep. So anyway, so I just wanted to encourage you, keep talking, because we have to continually expose this wickedness. So
amen.
Right.
God.
Yeah, no, that's great. So this story, right, of the mountains being held above the Jews, and they're threatened with it, its origins in the Jewish tractate Avodah Zarah, where we are told on occasion, so God is represented as saying to the Israelites, I covered you over with the mountain like a lid, right, or like an umbrella. So also in Sabbath, okay, we read in folio 88, verse 1, these words teach us that the Holy One, blessed be He, inverted the mountain above them like a pot, and said unto them, if you receive the law, well, but if not, there shall your grave be. They just took the story, and suddenly, it's not even in Torah or anything like that. No, it's again in the Talmud or related, you know, literature, and suddenly it becomes the word of Allah. It's all borrowings, all of it. Harut, Marut, the whole trip. And there is nothing like this fable in the Pentateuch. It originated in the mistake of a Jewish commentator who misunderstood the words of the Bible. In Exodus 32, verse 19, we're informed that when Moses descended the mountain with the two tablets of stone in his hands, he saw that the Israelites were worshiping the golden calf. Angry at the shameful sight, he threw down the stone tablets from his hands, and he broke them beneath the mountain, which is going to be relevant. Any thoughts before I go on, before I continue with this explanation?
Just chapter Muhammad could figure out the difference between a legend and a true story. That's a problem.
Yeah. So chapter 19, verse 17 tells us, while Allah was giving Moses the law, the people stood at the nether part, sorry, that's the Bible here, at the nether part or beneath the mountain. In each case, the phrase meant at the foot of the mountain. But again, he's very critical here of these particular Jews who wrote these legends. He says they chose to misunderstand the phrase, and the legend of the elevation of the mountain was invented to explain the words beneath the mountain. The tale of the holding up the mountain above men's heads is similar to a Hindu legend related in the Sanskrit Sastras. So what he's telling us, though, is that at the foot of the mountain was misunderstood for underneath the mountain. So they create a legend where they lift the mountain up into the sky to explain to some guy who's got reading comprehension problems. So yeah,
That's funny.
go on.
Or someone who can't read.
Exactly. It is said that Krishna, wishing to protect the people of Gokula, his native city, his city of Goku, good grief, from a severe rainstorm, dragged up from its stony base a mountain named Govardhana, which is styled the biggest of all mountains, and for the space of 7 days and nights, he suspended it on the tips of his fingers over their heads like an umbrella. We cannot, he says, we cannot assume that the Jews borrowed this story from the Hindus, but it is evident that Muhammad derived the tale referred to in the Quran from Jewish sources, while the Jews were led to accept or invent the story through taking literally and in an unnatural sense the Hebrew phrase beneath the mountain. Unless there were trade links that somehow got this story, the trade links were the internet of the day.
Well, they don't have internet then, I know for sure.
But when the Jews were scattered, from the Assyrian captivity, not the Babylonian, but the Assyrian captivity, that they did go as far as India. And in fact, there's some rabbis who say, like in the Hindu teaching of the Brahmin, those are the highest level of in the castes system.
Yeah.
That the Brahmin, they say that comes from Abraham, and so some rabbis think that, so that there's a connection between the Brahmin and the Abraham, so.
Okay, that is interesting. That is some food, because look, within Islam, I've looked at the evidence and I did study it. I haven't covered it on the channel at all, but someone sent me some stuff about the links with Islam to the Shiva Lingams and stuff, and man, it is compelling. It's solid. Clearly, there's been borrowings. So, yeah, he says this is not, however, the only story that the Quran relates what took. We may understand we have to consider the era introducing the Christian. Okay, hold on. Quran relates concerning what took place during the sojourn of the Israelites in the wilderness. Not less strange is what we're told about the calf which they made to worship during Moses' absence. Now, in Surah 20, we are told that when Moses returned and reproached them for this, they said, "We are made to bear loads of the ornaments of the people, and we threw them into the fire. And the Samaritan likewise cast in." Now, we know the Samaritans only were created the Samaritans started as a nation about 700 years later.
After Moses, yeah.
So now he's going to give us a hypothesis or evidence for, I'm not saying necessarily it's proof. Evidence is not necessarily proof, right? And proof is not always persuasion. Let's also be honest. But he's going to give us correlation for where this may well come from. Then he brought unto them a calf in body which could low. Now, Tafsir al-Jalalain's note says that the calf was made of flesh and blood. It had the power of making the mooing sound, right, lowing, because life was given it through a handful of dust from the print left by the hoof of the angel Gabriel's horse. Now the angel Gabriel needs a horse, okay, which the Samaritan had collected and put into its mouth, according to verse 96 of the same surah. And he explains where the whole Samaritan thing comes from, because we cover this at length on the channel, Usama.
Mm-hmm.
The legend comes from the Jews. And we see this in the following extract from the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, number 45, or section 45. And this calf came out lowing, and the Israelites saw it. Rabbi Yehuda says that Samael was hidden in its interior and was lowing in order that he might deceive Israel. The idea that the calf was able to low must come from the supposition that, although made of gold, it was alive since it came out of the fire. So again, we see that the use of a figurative expression, when taken literally, led to the creation of a myth to explain it. We'll cover more. JC, you were saying?
Yeah, so this is an extract from the letters between Leo III and Umar II, so around the year 720. And of course, People dispute them, so maybe they are legit, maybe not. As with everything old, you never know. But it says this thing, which is very curious. First, it actually doesn't call the Quran. It says Furqan or Purkan in the original. But then it says, when he's talking about this book of the Arabs, he says, although we know that it was Umar Abu Turab, who is Ali, and Salman the Persian. Now, the term the Persian is Al-Farisi, and that is the same as the Pharisee. So Mel has actually done research on this, and other people as well, saying actually maybe it was not Salman the Persian, but Salman the Pharisee. So when we see all of these legends that happens to be from the Jews, and then we have the Emperor of Byzantium accusing these three people, one of them possibly being a Pharisee, you can start joining the dots, and maybe this is the actual true origins of how the book came together.
So Salman the Persian who composed that. So yeah, even though the rumors got around that God sent it down from the heavens,
but
so they were accused.
Yeah, but Allah said in the Quran that nobody helped Muhammad because the man they're talking about who supposedly helped Muhammad was a foreigner and he could not speak Arabic, or he does not know Arabic, and the Quran is pure Arabic.
It's not. It's not. They can't even prove that.
Well, just because you're biased, you're not telling the truth, you know.
Yeah, I'm confused with the facts.
Me too.
It's very confused. So yeah. So he says we have the words a calf in the body in the Quran as signifying that it had flesh and blood. But Muhammad seems to have misunderstood most of the Jewish legend correctly. Understood most of the Jewish legend correctly. But the word Samael puzzled him. So in the Jewish legend, the calf is kind of alive. So Muhammad has an alive calf or whatever. But the word Samael puzzled him, not understanding that this is the Jewish name of the angel of death, and perhaps misled as to the pronunciation. He mistook the word for the somewhat similar Samiri, which means Samaritan. Of course, he made this mistake because he knew that the Jews were the enemies of the Samaritans, and he fancied that they attributed making the calf to one of the latter, that one of the enemies made the calf, right? They were blaming someone else. He was doubtless confirmed in this belief by some indistinct recollection of having heard that Jeroboam, king of what was afterwards called Samaria, had made Israel to sin by leading them to worship the calves which he made and placed in Dan and Bethel, right, in 1 Kings. But since the city of Samaria was not built, or at least called by that name until several hundred years after Moses' death, the anachronism is at least amusing and would be startling in any other book than the Quran, in which far more stupendous errors frequently occur.
Sure.
So what do you think of that?
When I hear it, you know what I think about, you know, because Muhammad was illiterate, of course, supposedly, but he literally, what did the people call him? It's in the Quran. He's called the ear. Yeah, so he'd hear something here, he'd hear something there, and you could just see him not knowing how to put everything together. And just like with the story of the mother of Jesus and the sister of Aaron, you know, he just heard something here, heard something there, you know, put it all together, and it's the Quran, you know, it's the word of Allah. So
yeah, because they call it the Samaritan, but the Samaritans weren't around for 700 years after that, I think, if I recall correctly. So how does the Quran get that wrong? And then Muslims have all sorts of explanations for it.
How did the Quran got everything else wrong? I mean, think about dirhams in Joseph's story, as the scholars of Islam really go in depth, paper money in the cavemen. In Muhammad days, it makes sense because you know that they were Samaritan and you know there were Jews, and it makes sense. But at the time of Moses, it does not make any sense. And so is every other story. This is what we call internal evidence that story is written wrong. Just for him to call the Holy Land, the name of the land of Canaan, the Holy Land, that was not named the Holy Land until Christians came in. You're talking about literally 1,500 years after Moses, when the Christian named that piece of land Holy Land. But you read in the Quran, chapter 2 and verse 20 to 26, enters the Holy Land. No, he should say enter the Promised Land or enter the Canaan land, but not the Holy Land. So yeah, it makes sense in Muhammad days, but at the time of the story, of course, it's an error.
Are you restricting Allah to geological, historical, and other facts?
There's no facts in Islam, period. You examine each one of these stories, there's always historical error in each one.
You know, I think that there's, you know, a better explanation, and that is that, you know, there is time travel in the Quran. You know, there's one verse that has Pharaoh, Haman, and the Tower of Babel in one verse, you know, in the same time. I mean, sure, there's, you know, 1,600 years between those different stories, but in the Quran, they're together. And, you know, and of course, the story of Mary, the sister of Aaron, 1,500 years, because there is time travel, you know, and that's the miracle of the Quran.
Yeah,
you know?
And then the Dome of the Rock is built 40 years after the Temple of Solomon and all of that. You're like, let me see. The Temple of Solomon is like 970 BC. Dome of the Rock comes in the AD era. I think Houston, we have a little problem here.
But don't worry, Muhammad assured them it's true, because when they asked him about the temple, he described it exactly. That is 600 years after being destroyed. He described it. He told them he got the mule with a rope, you know, the big 6 feet rope, and he ties the rope around about the pillar, and he tied it nice so he will not lose his mule. So you see, we got internal evidence that the man was there and he saw the pillars, and he knows it was true. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. And so on with every story Muhammad put in the Quran, man. God help us.
I mean, Hussein from Steve, I know we should call you 003.5. How's that? Right? I mean, look, you haven't been here for all of this. We've done several episodes on tracing the origin of every single Quranic story, and it all comes from Jewish myths. At the moment, we're focusing on the Jewish myths, right? So all of its practices or its stories come from Jewish myths and practices, Zoroastrian myths and practices, Gnostic myths and practices, pagan myths and practices. We're going through like section by section. I mean, at what point does when literally every single thing can be traced to a previous practice, or a children's story, or a myth, or a pagan origin, and they all claim it's the word of Allah and it's all original? I mean, at what point do you buy any of their defenses? I mean, I don't know. What's your take on all of this? If the Harut and Marut thing, it's from a pagan Armenian story.
It just goes. There's also the story of the 7 sleepers. I'm sure you've talked about that. And that these stories, which are and the this was in the New York Post recently about the infancy gospel of James, with the talking baby Jesus, and these stories existed in Muhammad's time, and literally, I think the Quran itself explains this the best, the best way that anybody can, and is that the people of Muhammad's time knew he was the ear. They called him the ear. He wasn't a reader. He wasn't a writer. He was
Legends
the
of
ear.
The past. Legends of the past, which you have written down.
The people of his time knew that.
Yeah.
And so everything we're doing now, in his day, they were doing it. In his day, they knew it, And it's like the only deception is if you watch CNN or read the New York Times, or if you go to Harvard University, where they legitimize this and say, elevate it,
Listen, guys, the word asatir written in the Quran 9 times. Quran 6:25, 8:31, 16:24, 23:83, 25:5, 27:68, 46:17, 68:15, and 83:13. And in all of them, Muhammad confessing with his own lips that they said this is the legends of the ancients. Can you imagine 9 times? I think 1 time would be embarrassing for me to put in my own writing. Oh, Usama, you copied that from somebody else. That helps.
Yeah. But you know what? I know for a fact all of these stories are from an original book of the Bible, right? It's from the Binjil, but the Binjil was lost. And the Muslims don't have a copy, but they had one. Promise, true story. They just can't find it right now.
And the proof that the Quran is right is written different than the Bible. Therefore, we know for sure, without any doubt, we got the truth in the Quran.
But the stories were in the Binjil, and they just don't have a copy of it to show us right now.
Sure. You know, I'm also interested a little bit in the Muhammad's obsession with cows. You know, it's the longest surah of the Quran is cow, and the next chapter, there's another chapter called cattle. You know, an'am, you know, which is cattle. You know, so you got both cows and cattle.
2 and 6.
And I know there's lots of magic animals. You know, the adulterous monkey, the adulterous birds, the whale, the noon. You know, all these funny animals. But the cows have a particularly special place with Muhammad. So,
and what's amazing, Brother Steve, when you read the story of the cow and the interpretation of the story of the cow in the book of the cow, you can't help but to laugh, because I believe it's another legend. We did not talk about that. Maybe you talked when I was not with you, Brother Lloyd. How is it if somebody commit a murder and you do not know who killed, you get a small piece of that cow after you kill it, and they pay bunch of money because a guy lost his son and he want to know who killed him, and nobody will tell him. They touched the dead body with a piece of that cow, and the man came back to life. It was my cousins who killed me. May Allah's curse be on them. And then he died again, and that's how the Jewish people will know who did the murder. I mean, I don't know. How can you be that stupid to believe such?
So that's the origin of the term holy cow.
Holy, yeah, it must be a holy cow. Must be. So it's like,
yeah.
And when you read in the Bible, we talk about purification and the killing of the cow for purification, and it's still talk about murder. If somebody got murdered, they did not. They washed their hand with the ashes of the cow. They said, "We are innocent of that man. We did not kill him." And you know what? If they lie, the curse of God will be on them. That is the true biblical account of the cow and the purification. Not that you touch him with the tail of the cow or the ear of the cow or somebody of the cow so he can come back to life. And they made up. Oh, God help us.
Yeah.
Did you guys? I haven't been here for the whole thing, but have you guys talked about Moses running after the rock naked?
No, not yet.
No. It's coming up soon. Near soon. Sorry. Yeah.
Yep. Surah 2, Al-Baqarah, 52, 53. We are told that the Israelites said, "O Moses, we shall never believe thee until we see God clearly." And that while they were gazing at the manifestation of God's presence, a thunderbolt struck them and they all died. But after their death, God raised them to life again. This fable is borrowed from the Jews. It's in Tractate Sanhedrin, section 5. We are told that they died on hearing the divine voice in the thunder, but that the law itself made intercession for them and they were restored to life. So they're borrowing from the Talmud. The Jews wrote the Talmud, and the Muslims seem to love the Talmud.
And we know biblically that when they saw the thunder and the lightning and the smoke, they told Moses, no. You go talk to God and you come and tell us. We don't want to have anything to do with God. I mean, that's the opposite of what is written in Talmud. The opposite of what Muhammad copied in his Quran.
But you know what, too, this is interesting. I've never seen this before. It says the law itself made intercession for them, that Muslims believe that on Judgment Day that the Quran surahs is going to turn into birds and stuff and make intercession for them. So.
And have a mouth. And yeah, exactly. So you can see how they extrapolate the story, how they take the germ of an idea. For instance, it says here, if we want to look for any foundation for such a fable, it may be found in the words of the Hebrews in Exodus 20, verse 19, and Deuteronomy, verse 5,
25.
or whatever that was. Let not God speak with us, lest we die. So this idea leads to the Talmudic tale, which leads to the Quranic borrowing and alteration.
And by the way, in the Bible, the 70 men whom Moses chose from the children of Israel went with him to the mountain, not to the top of the mountain, but to the mountain, and they saw the Lord. and they did not die. Obviously, they did not see God the Father. They saw Jesus Christ, as we read the descriptions there. So the Jewish people never asked God to see him, but the 70 saw the Lord. I mean, we can go there, but we don't have enough time for it today. Of course, we can do it another study, and you don't see this made up stuff all the time. It's unbelievable how Muhammad got every story wrong. Every story wrong.
Everyone. So far, we have traced how many stories to an apocryphal source, a Gnostic source, say.
When Genesis, we haven't even left the book of Genesis yet.
Yeah. So let's finish off today, maybe with this. We can go a little bit here because I've done like 5 more pages. Let's see. All Muslims believe that the Quran was written on the preserved tablet long before the creation of the world. Now, this belief is in accordance with what he said in Surah. Okay, that's going to be interesting. 85, there we go. Got it. LXXV, plus an X. And Al-Buruj, nay, but it is a glorious Quran in a preserved tablet. Strangely enough, they do not believe that the Psalms are of the same age and antiquity, although in Surah 21, Al-Anbiya 105, God is represented as saying, and indeed, we have already written in the Psalms. Interesting. That as for the earth, my righteous servants shall inherit it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so the Psalms comes, interesting point that he makes there. The reference here is to Psalm 37, right? The just shall inherit the earth.
And by the way, that is the only verse which Muhammad quote from the Psalms, which he calls Zabur in the Quran. Can you imagine 150 chapters? He mentioned just one verse.
Yeah, it says this is the only text in the Old Testament which is actually quoted in the Quran. Although there are some 131 passages in the Quran in which the law, the Psalms, and the Gospel are named. And it is frequently asserted of them that they were sent down by God to his prophets and apostles. JC, doesn't that link up to the Quranic dilemma or the Islamic dilemma?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it looks like everybody had noticed this a really long time ago, that the Quran seems to say, hey, look, all of the things that came before, they were amazing, but don't believe those who make up stories and say they are divine. And then we look at the Quran, and is basically just borrowing everything that is not inspired, and actually affirming that all of those other things were correct. And Muslims now have to say that no, it was some magical Injil and magical Torah which we don't have anymore for reasons. So yeah, it's all over the place.
And also, one thing too about this is that Allah himself says he wrote in the Psalms. And so proof that this is his words, the Psalms, and then it says, nobody can change my words. And Psalms have devastating prophecies about Jesus. In Psalm 22, they pierced my hands and my feet, mm-hmm. And so this one particular verse in the Quran says that Allah wrote in the Psalms,
Psalms. And no one can change his words except Muslims don't actually believe in the Quran because they make up stuff that goes fully against the Quran. And you're like, this is clown world we're living in. It's this, it just makes no sense.
And they don't believe the Hadith either, because the Hadith says that when Moses and Adam met, that Adam says that Allah wrote the Torah for you. So Allah wrote both the Torah this is he himself wrote them. And Muslims don't believe the Hadith or the Quran. So.
Yep, that's a problem. Yep.
Well, yeah, except when it's convenient, and again, not when it's inconvenient, unfortunately. So, to most men, it would seem evident that a book cannot be quoted and referred to as an authority until after it has been composed, and that therefore the books of the Bible must have been in existence before the Quran. Of course, we know from history this is the case, but we do not find any consideration of this kind ways at all with the Muslims, who still cling to their assertion that the Quran was long ago, ages before Muhammad's time, written upon the preserved tablet. So we therefore proceed to inquire what the received traditions tell us in explanation of this phrase about the preserved tablet. And we find the answer in such accounts as that given in Qisasul Anbiya, whatever, right, or something of the prophets here, in giving an account of the way
stories of the prophets.
Stories of the prophets. Okay, Qisas ul Anbiya.
Qisas means stories,
Qisas. Okay, Qisas. In giving an account of the way in which Allah created all things, that work says, beneath the throne of the highest heavens, He created a pearl, and from that pearl He created a preserved tablet, and from the tablet He made plastic containers, and from the containers He made pharmacies.
Wait a minute.
And in the pharmacies,
you're lying.
So, and in the containers there were tablets called paracetamol to save you from the freaking headache that this nonsense is giving me.
Amen.
And its height was 700 years' journey, and its breadth was 300 years' journey. Around it was all adorned with rubies through the power of the Most High. And then came the pen, the command, write thou my knowledge in my creation, and that which is existent unto the day of resurrection.
You know how big that tablet is, Brother Lloyd, when you think about it? 700 years traveling. That's you go around the earth many times. This must be a huge tablet. Why you need that huge tablet when I can put the entire Bible and the entire Quran in any piece of land? I mean, literally, you don't need that huge 700 years.
Is it camel travel?
Camel speed travel? No. We have to be honest. Camel speed. You can go on Google and ask how many miles a camel travels in a day, and you time it to 365, and you time it to 700. You find it's much bigger than the earth. I mean, how big is the Quran?
It's only 6,000. I'm from Africa. The fastest thing that I can think in terms of, because of my upbringing, is a donkey falling down a greased mine shaft. So
trust me, you don't want it fast. You got it wrong.
Donkey speeds. That's probably pretty big.
You needed this. If it's fast, 700 years, it would make it 10,000 times bigger. You know how the slower the animal, the better it is to help Muhammad and his scholars.
Look, I mean, could be donkey's years, it could be tortoise years. We don't know.
I like camel years because that is how you travel in the desert. Otherwise, it will take you forever. It will make the subject worse, man.
What if it was like a baby camel with small feet, short legs?
I'd also like to find out about this preserved tablet, just because when I was in school, they told me the Quran we have is exactly what's on the preserved tablet. But Shabir Ali, when he was confronted with the fact that there's so many different Qurans, said all of them are on the preserved tablet.
Now we need a bigger tablet. Now, see, which help me, brother. I need your explanation. If we have a bigger tablet, we can have all these 40-some Qurans in Arabic. MashaAllah. Makes sense now. Thank you so much. I was about to
probably 1,400 year travel now, not just 700 years. I don't know.
Yeah, MashaAllah.
Yep. So let's continue here. So let's finish this section here. We'll just go a couple more pages. So accordingly, the pen wrote God's knowledge, Allah's knowledge, in Allah Most High's creation of everything that He had wished unto the resurrection day. The extent that the leaf of a tree moveth or descendeth or ascendeth, and it wrote every such thing. So basically, this is Allah's sovereign power is such that literally nothing happens without Allah controlling it, predicting it, etc. So the idea of the preserved tablet is borrowed again from the Jews. In the book of Deuteroscopy 10, verses 1 to 5, we are told that when Moses had, at God's command, hewn out 2 tablets of stone, similar to the ones that he had broken, God wrote upon them the 10 commandments, and He commanded Moses to preserve them in an ark of shittim or acacia wood. The Hebrew word for tablet here used is identical with the Arabic. From 1 Kings 8, verse 9, and Hebrews 9, verses 3 and 4, we learn that these 2 tablets were preserved in the ark of the covenant, which Moses had made in accordance with God's command.
Yeah, we call it in Arabic lawhay al-shahada.
Right. And it says here, the narrative power of a preserved tablet inscribed with God's command and by His power gradually arose among the Jews and afterwards amongst the Muslims or the Mohammedans. From the language of Surah 85, translated above, it is clear that in Muhammad's mind there existed not only one but at least 2 preserved tablets. For the Arabic is a preserved tablet, not the preserved tablet. So in Arabic, you have a preserved tablet, not the tablet. So, and this is actually contrasts this with Mohammedans at the present day as they seem to understand it. Interesting. So there must therefore be a reference to 2 stone tablets which Moses prepared and preserved in the Ark of the Covenant. And these were kept in the tabernacle, which symbolized God's presence with his people. It was natural to speak of them as preserved in God's presence. That actually would make very good sense. That makes very good sense.
In the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant, they have kept these 2 tablets.
Yeah. Hence the origin of the fancy that the preserved tablets were kept in heaven. It was not difficult to deduce the antiquity from that belief. But why does Muhammad assert that the tablet was written upon that the Quran was written upon a preserved tablet? To answer this question, we must consult the Jews and learn what they in Muhammad's time and previously thought to have been written upon the 2 tablets, which were in the Ark of the Covenant. So in spite of the fact that deuteroscopy clearly states that not only the 10 commandments were written upon these tablets, in the book of deuteroscopy, it says that only the 10 commandments were written upon these tablets. But after a time, the belief arose that all the books of the Old Testament and also the whole of the Talmud was written upon them, or at least given along with them. So when Muhammad heard this assertion made by the Jews regarding their sacred books, it was natural for him to assert that his revelation also was written upon one or the other of these preserved tablets. Otherwise, he thought he could hardly claim a degree of authority equal to the Old Testament. And the Muslims, not understanding to what the words preserved tablet referred, gradually invented the whole story. So to ascertain what the Jews thought about the contents of the tablets, we have to consult the tractate Berakot, right? Folio 5, column 1, there we read, Rabbi Simeon ben Lakish says, "What is that which is written? And I shall give thee the tablets of stone and the law and the commandment which I have written, that thou mayst teach them. And the tablets, these are the 10 commandments, the law, that which is read, and the commandment, this is the Mishnah, which I have written, these are the prophets, and the hagiographer, that thou mayst teach them." Actually, the hagiography, that would be like the Sirah or the Hadiths. And this denotes the Gemara. This teaches that all of them were given to Moses from Sinai. And every learned Jew of the present time acknowledges that we should reject this absurd explanation because he knows the Mishnah was compiled about the year 220 of the Christian era. The Jerusalem Gemara about 430 AD and the Babylonian Gemara about 530 AD. Let me see. I've only got this section and I'll finish here. But the Muslims, not knowing this, seem to have totally accepted such assertions as true and applied them to their Quran. So to complete the proof that the legend of the preserved tablet in which the Quran is said to have been written is derived from a Jewish source, we only have to state that in the Pirkei Avot, right, it is said that the 2 tablets of the law were created along with 9 other things at the time of creation of the world and at sunset before the first Sabbath began. I'll pause there. So what do you think of all that? I think that really does explain the origin of the sacred tablets.
Wow. If you don't mind, my last word, let's go to chapter 7 in the Quran, verse 145.
Chapter 7,
145. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. To fit with what you're talking about here. And by the way, the scholars' interpretation, it blow your mind that Moses used to carry these boards made out of wood, and they're huge boards on his shoulder as he traveled.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the word alwa, according to Arabic grammar, means 3 or more tablets. However, in the story found in Exodus, the 10 commandments were on 2 tablets. The tablets in the Quran included not only the 10 commandments, but also many other things. But that's exactly what the Jewish story says.
Yes, Muhammad was copying.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we wrote for him in the alwa from everything, a sermon and an exposition of everything.
Everything, man. It's not 10 commandments, 10 sentences. Simple,
Wow.
one can read them in a minute. I'm talking about everything. It's the same, exactly what the Muslims believe, but you didn't get it, Lloyd. You need to say the Shahada first, and then you'll get it.
I mean, but this is identical. I mean,
Hassan is
I
laughing
think
at
this
me.
is
I
very
don't
much
like when you
identical.
laugh at me, man. Listen, Hassan, you don't laugh
I
at me.
am-
You need to smile, but not laugh.
JC, you've been quiet for a while. How does this strike you? Does this strike you as credible?
Well, credible. Oh yeah, I'm taking my shahada right now. Now I'm thinking, is it possible that when the Quran is talking about these preserved tablets, what it's actually saying is basically this is a recitation of some of those things which are preserved in the book. And when you are going through these stories, you see that there are stories from the Talmud, there are legends, there are all sorts. So if the belief from that group was that the tablets in the Ark of the Covenant had all of those stories, that verse may just be saying this is an Arabic reading of things that are on those tablets. It's not saying that the Quran is in those tablets. But I can't remember the verses very well, so maybe I need to look into that. But that's what I'm thinking.
Interesting. But also, if these stories only arose in the 3rd century to the 5th century, then Allah, his eternal tablet, only dates back from the 3rd to the 5th century.
No, it was there 20,000 years before the creation. I'm sorry, 50,000 years before the creation of the world, man. You don't understand math. You need to learn Muhammad's math. You see, so you can figure it out right.
Hussein, your thoughts on all of this so far?
You know, I'm interested to know what the mother of the book is doing and where she is. You know, because you know, she's with Allah, first of all. And so I'm just trying to connect the dots here. So, you know, I'm always thinking of relationships. And I know Allah's lonely. He's been alone for so long. But the mother of the book is there with him. So, yep.
Listen, I will never know the answer for that question. So I'm glad you asked. Hopefully some Muslim will contact us and give us the answer.
Yeah, but I mean, would you expect that so much? I mean, oftentimes there's like a direct one-to-one correlation between what's in the Quran and what's in legend. And legends that we can date to 220, 250, 500 AD. Not 10 million years ago. You know, when according to Islam or whatever, the tablet was created infinity years ago. Recent. And we can date these legends. I mean, so much.
Like, oh, I'm sorry.
Go on.
You know, it's like I did a little video with my wife once, and I was pretending, you know, like I was writing a holy book, and I used these words in it. I said, you know, every night in my dream, I see you, I feel you. That's how I know you are mine. Near, far, wherever you are, I know the heart will go on. You know, most people will recognize that from Titanic. You know,
wait. Give me more, man. Why you stop? Give me another 2 verses.
I'm just getting into the. Come on, the guy's telling me a story, and I'm just getting.
Why you
quit? This just feels right for that, you know.
I mean, I enjoyed it, and then he started talking from his own head. Give me the poetry, man.
But you know the Quran 17:1, you know, the verse about the moon splitting, that was a love song. It was a poem of love, you know, to a woman, you know, and it became the word of Allah, you know. So Muhammad was the ear, man, you know. This just points to the fact that that's the best description for him, and Allah memorialized it by putting it in the Quran that the people called him an ear. This is the best proof. And the fact that he gets everything wrong, or he gets, you know, details wrong.
Everything.
You know. But look, I mean, his heart did go on.
Listen, Allah said, have they not considered the Quran? If it from others than Allah, they would have found in it many inconsistency. I said one inconsistency is enough for me to say goodbye, Allah. But you have to have many inconsistencies. Lloyd only covered 10,000 inconsistencies so far. So that's not enough.
Yeah, we still, we're going to be here for a while. But yeah, this is just, I mean, man, I don't think we've even finished the chapter on the Jewish stuff yet. Let me double check. Yeah, the Jewish stuff still goes on for a while. I mean, we're still going to get to all the Gnostic stuff, the whole Persian stuff, the Christian legends he steals. I mean, good grief. I mean, but it's obvious this is all just plagiarism. I mean, this is copy-paste nonsense.
That's because you read the other book. Muslims never read the other book. Therefore, they know What he have is the truth.
I mean, I'd like to show them, have them show me proof that these stories that we can now date to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th centuries, or 3rd, 4th, 5th centuries, date back to 9 million BC or whenever the Quran was written by Allah.
The answer from Muslims would be, well, Allah could just inspire other people, and then when they write this legend, actually he was giving them true knowledge or some nonsense like this. But the main problem that one of the many problems with the narrative is that we see that everything is wrong, but very, very wrong. And we say, okay, Muhammad was the ear. And it's like, yes, but then nobody would follow him after that. When he passed away, that's it. No one would have mentioned that guy again. But instead of that, a whole religion is actually built, and all of these stories start to appear much, much later. So there is a huge disconnect. I mean, if this book, we read it now at face value, as we understand it more and more, we see just stories put together and people saying, yeah, these are things from ancient times, and they are. So what was the book? Was it supposed to just be a bit of comedy? Was it supposed to just tell a little bit of stories, and then things got out of hand when someone said, no, now we're going to treat this as divine? There is a big disconnect between what we read in the book and then what we see in the Islamic Empire actually going there and conquering lands and using the book. They cannot use the book because the book makes no sense.
But also there's a disconnect, as you mentioned before, between Islam and the Quran. The two often are not even similar. The two are often very disconnected. Islam and its origins and the Quran and its origins are often not the same story at all, it seems. Hussein, you're nodding your head there?
Well, I was just, listening to Brother JC, and it was my head, and I already mentioned this, but I was reading the New York Post, which, my depth of my research, but a few months ago, and I did a live stream about it because it was talking about the infancy gospel of Thomas, actually it was called, and that they actually found a small
century copy.
Yeah, they actually found it, and they say when it existed, it was about 530 AD, like within a few years of Muhammad, to where that these stories were circulating back then, and then they end up in the Quran, and so it's like
listen. I give you the explanation. You see, Allah in His pre-knowledge, He knows that this is going to happen. That's why He wrote it on the guarded board 50,000 years before creation. And then when the right time came, 500 whatever after Christ, these things was written so that Muhammad can put it right in the right words in the Holy Quran.
And I think the New York Post was also inspired, to be honest, so,
it must be because Allah wrote about it. I guarantee you. If you look at the guarded board, you're going to see that in New York.
Now, Paul Williams, before he blocked me on X for constantly talking to him, shall we say, challenging him or trying to, engage with him, he was very excited when he says, we have finally found the oldest copy of this ancient text, which affirms the truth that this book is legitimate. Right, this is this copy of the infancy gospel of Thomas. He was calling it an ancient text which affirms the Quran. Right now, it's telling a freaking Gnostic story that is clearly a fairy tale invented by Gnostics and Christians who were telling stories to their kids, right, about Jesus or whatever. It's not even the true Jesus. This is a very nasty Jesus who kills other children. But it's insane. So he was trying to say this book affirms the Quran. We've just found the oldest. And it's from the 5th or 6th century, whatever, right? So he's really trying to make out that this book now, which tells us that clearly he's defending Gnosticism here. He's defending what is apocryphal. He's defending what is late.
The Quran is apocryphal.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's no. If you follow his teaching, 100%, we know the Quran is it's a fake. It's a made up. Exactly. I'm thankful that he come up to that conclusion, but he need to learn about what he's talking about and make a big difference.
Paul Williams, I've invited him several times. I've tagged him. I've replied to him. I've tried to reach him, and say, look, he's spoken about the Sharia. I said, look, let's talk about the Sharia. Let's have a discussion. What's actually in it? Let's not say, the Sharia is amazing. It's fantastic. Let's actually open it up and read it. And like, yeah, I'm still waiting. I'm going to be waiting a long time. So yeah, but guys, for the audience, I mean, I think this is an open and shut case. I mean, we're going to go on with this, but how much of the Quran haven't we shown to be very late apocryphal legends from the Christian era, or very early Akkadian, Babylonian, and so on myths, legends, and pagan religious stories, none of which are Abrahamic. The Jews would reject those. I mean, any Orthodox Jew would reject those. Any Christian would reject those. They're not Abrahamic. They're pagan. They're the kind of things God says don't do that. And then afterwards, these stories we know are legendary in the Midrash and so on. It's like, yeah, at what point do we just say, look, I mean, this is a joke? And scholars have known this for at least 200 years. This book goes back over a century. These guys knew this, and he's talking about scholars that he got it from a century before him.
God help us. God help us. But you didn't have to give much. You didn't give enough so far. And maybe what you said is true, but the Quran said there must be much more than what you said.
Yeah.
Few mistakes is not enough.
Yeah, but for example, here, Lloyd, when you said that this guy said, okay, well, you see, we have this Gnostic account of Jesus, so therefore the Quran is true. And it's like, okay, but we also have the Alexander the Great fantasy. So we have that one. Why are you not pointing at that one to say, you see, this legend actually confirms the Quran? So the whole thing is like this. They take things from legends and they just point at one that they like and say, this proves the Quran. And it's like, no, point at the other. But even the thing with the sleepers in the cave, which we know when it was written, the Quran tells you very clearly that the guy writing it or reading it or whatever, he didn't know the story very well, because the story actually says, some people say it's 4 and the dog is 5, and some people say 5 and the dog is 6, some people 6 and the dog 7, and Allah knows best. And it's like, guys, this is not Allah speaking. This is a guy who is trying to tell a story and he can't remember how many people were supposed to be in the cave. So that should be already game over. But instead of that, they will just excuse it. No, this is because Allah had to express it like this to show that people said many things about it, but in reality, only he knows. And he's like, oh, come on. This is just a guy who doesn't know the story very well. It's all like that.
So who's ready to take the Shahada here, guys?
I pass.
Next time.
Yeah, next time. You didn't convince me enough. You have to give me more evidence. Otherwise, I can't.
Hey, wait, do we have to tell the Shahada over the Quran or over the Talmud? Because I'm a bit confused right now.
that is true. Or do you have to do it like in a pagan Armenian fashion or something?
Can we say the Shanana? Can we say just Shanana? Like you do it, Shana.
Good night, sweetheart. Yay, it's time to go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm showing my age. Hussein is in the same ballpark here. He's, he knows this.
Yes, so I do.
Sorry?
Yeah, but I was going to say that I heard somebody talk.
Man. What happened,
Sorry.
Lloyd? Yeah.
Okay, now at the very end, we lost Lloyd. And
We lost
else.
Lloyd, we lost Hussein before. So we got 2 out. And I'm glad that we are in the end. So we finished. Praise God. Here's you are. Hussein is back. And come on, Lloyd. Come on, Lloyd. Say goodbye, brother.
You know what? To go back to another song, I don't know that, one of my favorite songs from the 70s was 2 out of 3 Ain't Bad. And so we had 2 out of 4 there for a second. So
2 out of 3.
We had the 2 best looking guys. The 2 best looking guys came.
Look, I grew up my hair. I wash my head every day and my face. Here's the problem, brother Steve. When I wash my face, I do not know where to stop. So I keep washing. And I use my head towel for my face towel. It's confusion, man. It's I want to draw a line. If I draw a line, then I can see where I stop when I wash my face. But hey.
Yeah, I tell people sometimes my hair is back, way back,
years back or location back. Down here in the bottom.
Well, I gotta go, you guys. Anyway, so God bless
Good to see
you.
you,
It's great
brother.
to
It
be
was
with
awesome
you.
meeting with you today. God bless you.
bless.
Keep us in your prayers. Appreciate it. Hey,
Guys,
Lloyd,
sorry,
before
I
you
just
go-
got back. Cheers, guys. Cheers, Hussein. So, guys, sorry, I don't know what happened there, but Allah works in mysterious ways.
I
He
think
kicked me
you
out
did
of
it
my own
with
stream.
purpose because I was saying something very important and I cannot even repeat because I could not remember what it is.
Yeah, you know, it was the power of Bowser. He very V. He or she also clearly has good taste in music and understands these iconic references.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Bowser has kicked me out because
Now,
I
by the
offended
way,
the Bowser.
Robert
Yeah.
Hussein said goodbye as you were about to come in the last.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I could hear you guys, but I couldn't get back in.
Yeah.
So guys,
Mother Earth.
yeah, so guys, that was great. Awesome stuff. Thank you everyone for being here this evening. Hopefully you've learned a great deal. Please use this information, talk about it. Let's just speak about it. I think other apologists need to get online and start asking Muslims these hard questions. Why is literally every single story in the Quran dated from this or coming from here or written over there? None of this stuff is ancient. It's all myths, legends, and good grief.
God help us.
So
like us and subscribe to us and share us. Some people may say, Lloyd, well, I don't know how to talk about that. I don't know. No, you can use your finger. Just share that video with 10 of your friends or maybe 20 of your friends. That you'll be doing everything we are trying to do.
You know, there's 670 of you watching the stream right now. So let's get at least 700 likes going. Okay.
Amen. And if each one of you share it with 10 people, now we're 60,000. I mean, think about it. It will grow. Woo! Praise God. Thank you, Jesus.
You're right.
Talk
So
to you
guys,
later.
have a good night. We shall be back. Take care, everyone. God bless.